Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice.
On the podcast today is Kris Plachy of Kris Plachy Coaching. Kris's focus is to guide leaders through the tricky path of learning to lead a team. We're going to talk about her 5-step management system on the podcast, as well as many other aspects of leading, coaching, and managing a team. This is such a great topic because many of you are growing your teams and focusing on this aspect of your business. Kris and I think alike on these topics, and it was really fun to dig in. Enjoy.
Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice.
Hey, Kris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Your information came across my desk months ago, and I know we've scheduled a couple of different times, and so I'm really excited to talk to you because you have a lot of background and knowledge and expertise dealing with teams, and I want to really dig into that topic with you today. But before we start, I would love, Kris, for you to take a few minutes and tell our listeners a little bit about your company and kind of about your journey to what brought you to where you are right now.
Awesome. I'd be happy to. So my business is Kris Plachy Coaching Group, and we coach female entrepreneurs on how to manage, lead, and coach their own teams, like really building that dream team and dealing with all of the challenges that come with managing other humans. And the work, I've been in my own business for about 8 years. The work really is an extension of my own sort of trajectory in managing, which I started when I was about 26 with very little training or, support. I worked in a startup culture, so we were sort of fending for ourselves. And so a lot of what I had to do was figure it out. And then I think I've always had sort of this interest in learning something and then helping other people do the same. And so even as a manager, and I didn't have a lot of tools, I started writing training for new managers because I was realizing there was so much nobody was teaching us. So I worked in direct ops management and leadership coaching and management for 20 some odd years. Well, I've been in it totally for 25 years. And I started studying coaching in 1994 before anybody knew what it was, and got certified in the 2000s and was master certified shortly thereafter. And so I've always had this equal passion between coaching and leadership. And so the work that I do with my clients is a real blend between true coaching and also then consulting and advising and mentoring female CEOs on the very unique challenges that women face when they are building their business and building the team.
And how long have you been doing just the business part for yourself, Kris?
About 8 years.
Okay. Yes, let's start with this. What is the difference with and how you define coaching and leadership?
Well, I think leadership is a part of coaching. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but coaching as a skill is really the skill of inquiry, to come from the perspective of saying, you have the answers that you need. My job is to help reveal those to you through being the conduit for that. And so, so many of the women I coach are incredibly accomplished. They're very successful women. So I don't suppose to know more about what they want for their business or themselves than they do. But sometimes, which I think is true for all of us, we get confused. We feel like we're, inside the bottle and we can't read the label, so to speak, right? Absolutely. Leadership has more of a perspective that says, I'm going to decide we're going this way. And I'm going to provide support, development, resources, tools to create and enact that vision. So, in coaching, I don't hold an agenda for my client, but in leadership, if I'm not leading my business, then nobody knows where we're going. So coaching is like a part of a tool belt that I think every strong leader has. But it's that, what is that old expression, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you overuse coaching, you underuse leadership, and vice versa, frankly. So that's how I see those fitting. And then management sits in the middle, that says basically, yeah, we're going to go that way, and we need this structure. We need these processes. We need these practices to go that way, right? And then I use coaching to help people get on board with those processes and practices and implement them in a business environment.
I really like the way that you described that, and I would absolutely agree with it. I know I usually tell my coaching clients, you're the expert in your business. I'm here to ask you questions and to help you see, something that you can't see, like you said, being inside the bottle. And you know what's so interesting, you probably see this too, as businesses are growing, especially when it's very organic and it's not coming from a place of, here's a full business plan. We're all of a sudden at this point where, oh my goodness, I need to hire somebody else, or I need to start building a team. Not as much attention has been given in some cases to, okay, how am I going to coach this new employee? How am I going to lead this new employee? How am I going to manage? It's more of, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed, go hire, right?
Yes.
And so
I need help. I just need help.
And I need it yesterday, and I don't even care. Just as long as you breathe, come in. And then there's the frustration and the irritation that, well, they don't get it. They don't understand. They're not picking up yet. Maybe we didn't give them anything they needed to be able to do the job.
Yep.
And I wish I could say that happened infrequently, but
oh no, it's frequent.
Not, right? It's a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how do you prepare your clients so that they can be prepared to hire properly?
So, I actually have sort of a 5-step initial thing I like to take all of my clients through. And what we do with our clients who work with us in our group program called How to CEO is we build the CEO team blueprint. And once we put these in place, then what happens is we have built a framework that exists outside of just our brain, outside of just our opinion in the moment, right? Because what you're explaining is so common that I think a lot of women, and I think it's just the way it has to be. It just has to always be this way. And it really doesn't. So the first thing everybody has to know, that if you have your own business, is why you have a business. What is your compelling reason? What is the reason that this business exists on the planet? And, my compelling reason, my vision is to prove the power of one thriving woman. Because I know when one woman thrives, the world changes. Her employees are happier, their families are happier, her family is happier, the community's served. So there's all sorts of elements that just one woman touches. So that vision in my business is the string, it's the common filter that we all use to determine who we hire. Are they on board with that? Do they align with that? Can they subscribe to it and advocate for it? And it also helps us make decisions once we're very clear about what we're doing. So you've got to have that in place. The second thing you've got to have is what I call your leadership and team operating system. Every operating system is what makes something go, right? Like your computer has an operating system. It's how it goes. You have an operating system. You just probably don't know what it is because we don't get taught leadership and managing skills anywhere. Even if people get MBAs, don't get taught this stuff. Those are the core beliefs you have, the values you have, and the expectations you have of other people who work for you. And we know the majority of performance issues are not skill related. They're behavior related.
Yes.
Right? They're people being late. They're people missing deadlines. They're people not trying, putting enough attention to detail. It's that kind of stuff that is what derails most employees. And those are the challenges for most of us, because we don't set up expectations around behavior ahead of time. And I think it's critical to say, hey, this is how we roll here, and here's why. So you have to know what your values are, because they're happening anyway. And I know people are like, oh, yawn, values. No, you can't dismiss them.
Well, if they're my listeners, they're not yawning, because I probably hit find your why and know your values in about every podcast. Because
that's so good.
I mean, I just had a conversation with one of my clients yesterday. We were talking about someone on their team who was not doing everything they needed to be doing. And I have 5 E's that I go through. Are they educated? Like, do they know what they're supposed to do? Are they equipped? Do they have what they need? They have very clear expectations. Have they been empowered? And are you encouraging them? So we walked through the E's.
Nice.
And then I asked my next 3 questions is, are they able to do the job? So do they have the ability? Do they have everything they need? Or is this, to your point, a character or a choice issue? Is this that you're choosing? Because if they have the ability and they have all the education, all the equipment, they understand the company why and values, the brand promise, like they understand all of it. At that point, it's a choice not to come in alignment with what you have asked them to do.
Yep.
And we have to kind of pull those layers back to see if there's something else that's happening. But we tend to your earlier point, Kris, I think we tend to go immediately to you're not doing it versus looking at, well, maybe I didn't even tell you what to do. Maybe I didn't set those expectations. Maybe I didn't, share with you the company culture and here's what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. And here are the tolerances. Maybe I didn't even give you any of that. So I love it. And you're singing my song, so keep singing it.
Yeah, so those have to be in place. So everything Michele just said and more, because it's the only way to build a rudder for performance management.
Yeah.
Then we have to have what I call role clarity. So everybody needs to know what their job is. There needs to be a job description for everybody in the company, including you. The reason that I teach that is not because I'm, I want to torture you. It's because it's how we set the role up for success. Yeah. It actually has nothing to do with even the person in the role.
Right.
It's the role. The role is in place for a reason. You have decided to pay $50K, $60K, $100K, whatever for this role. It makes only good sense that you would have that very well documented so that everybody is on the same page about what's expected from the role, irrespective of who's in it. But then to couple that, the 4th step are the measures, right? How do I then assess against the position? What are the key performance indicators that I look at on a regular basis for the role?
Right.
What are those key behaviors and expectations that we talk about on the regular basis for the position and for just being someone who's a part of my business? Measures, when I'm dealing with a circumstance where someone on the team who's not performing, but we don't really know why, those are the 2 questions I ask are, what were the expectations that you set? And if those are clear, then I ask, what's your measure and what's your accountability practice? And usually we either have unclear expectations and unclear accountability, or we have clear expectations, but just no accountability.
Yeah.
So we're really clear about what we want, but then we don't close the loop. We don't do any follow-up.
Yeah. What is I didn't coin it, and I don't even remember who did, but you get what you inspect, not what you expect.
Exactly.
And we so often forget the inspection point for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes I've heard some leaders say, well, I don't want to make it look like I'm coming behind them, or I don't want
I don't want to micromanage.
I don't trust them, or that fear of micromanagement. And then they Kris, kind of end up going totally the opposite direction.
Yes.
Making it like a hands-off. It would almost be the equivalent of us taking a middle schooler and saying, here are all the rules for how you get yourself into adulthood, and then never checking behind them. Like, that seems insane to us, right? That we would do that. Here's all of our expectations. Here's how you should care for yourself. Here's how you should make decisions. And then we just take our hands off and go, well, we're done. We told them. Surely they've got it. I don't want to be that parent.
I would get it.
Yeah. And they don't.
No.
I see that a lot. And then I also see, like you said, not having those KPIs, not even saying we're going to check in or giving it. Here's the other big one I see with this is not giving a deadline. So no dates. It might say, here's what I'm going to measure, but not here's the date I'm measuring it by, or here's
Right.
the timeline or something, so that they know here's the deal with measurements. They should be able to almost look at it themselves and know how they're ranking towards the measurement.
Yeah, absolutely. The more transparent, the better. I agree.
That's right. That's right.
It's almost then like you and that person can sit on the same side of the desk,
Yes.
figuratively, and say, whoa, oh dear, that didn't happen, versus me having to tell you it didn't happen. Right.
Or being able to go to your manager and go, hey, this is not happening. Something's off. Help me strategize. And I love those conversations where it's like we're on the same side of the table, because it is so much less adversarial, and it's together we're working to solve the ultimate problem, not we are the problem.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. What's the fifth one? I'm waiting now.
Well, the fifth one is probably just exactly what we said. It's follow-up and feedback.
Okay.
It's the follow through, and then it's the feedback. It's being able to tell someone, yeah, no, this isn't what I was expecting. This is what I was expecting instead, or amazing, more of this, please. Right? We need to do both. We need to become experts at all kinds of feedback. Positive reinforcement is very effective. Unfortunately, we tend to be real busy. And so a lot of times we only focus on the mistakes that were made or the things that didn't go well. And one of the conundrums that a lot of, I know, female entrepreneurs bump into is they feel like they have to make decisions all day. They feel like their team is just constantly saying, well, what about this? Do you like this? What do you think we should do about this? And the one thing they'll say to me is, how do I get them to make some decisions? How do I get them to solve problems? And when I have that kind of a potential issue, my hunch is that the people that work for that entrepreneur don't feel safe making mistakes, which means we haven't created an environment where I'm giving you feedback all the time, not just when things go wrong. And if when things go wrong, I rail against people, or, and that's an exaggeration, but even still, I'm difficult. I get mad. I get frustrated. I take it personally. My team will get afraid to make decisions and take action because they don't want to disappoint me and they don't want to deal with my response. So the more you lean in and give feedback, the easier it gets and the more used to all of it people get. I just had to tell someone on my team 2 weeks ago who made a sales page for me. I said, yeah, no, this is not it right here. What's happening? This, and we went through it. We did a whole screen walkthrough and like this and this, what happened? No, that. And but because I also will tell her, you can't leave me. I don't know who you are. You're amazing. Where did you come from? You are magic, right? I'll tell her just as much, if not more, about when she just knocks my socks off. So you have to build trust, and the way through that is following up and feedback.
I was in corporate, 30 years ago, up to about 22 years ago, something like that, a long, long time ago. And back then, feedback came once a year. It was a big performance review. And you would go in and they would tell you everything. And some of the things they would say to you, you're like, that was a year ago. Like, I didn't even, I can't even hardly remember what I did last week. And you're wanting me to now answer for something a year ago, and you didn't speak to me about it until a year. Like you've been holding in your mind some decision that I did, good and bad, right? From a year out, so that you could wait for this big day to tell me this. And that's okay. How? Like, and so the interesting thing was you would walk out of those performance reviews and it didn't matter how great it was. They all felt compelled to tell you somewhere you missed the mark. Like it was compelling for them, right? They had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so because you had waited a year, you couldn't affect change. You couldn't do anything about it. Every single one of them, even when they were awesome, you walked out and kind of thought, well, that felt like a kick. It just, it wasn't a good setup when it was once in your entire year that you got talked to. And you know what I'm seeing a lot more over the last years, the trend is more now, is that ongoing feedback conversation, that ongoing feedback loop, right? Where it's, you know, having I encourage my clients to have at least a 15-minute one-on-one call conversation, you know, based on COVID and how they're having to communicate, at least every 2 weeks, where you just clear everything and just for 15 minutes, have a conversation. Where are you? How are you? How close are you? You know, what do you need? Something, so that it's this connection point that you can share, and everybody knows you're going to get together to share, right? So it's not like nobody's taken off guard. And then certainly more often if needed, but building that relationship that says, I'm going to block, you know, 15, 30 minutes, whatever is needed. And we're going to sit down and we're going to touch base and we're going to make sure that you have my feedback, I have your feedback, because the goal again is on the same side of the table. The longer we wait, the more we start to put the other person on the other side of the table, at least mentally.
Right. Absolutely.
And then that causes difficulty. Okay. So I'm going to recap and see if I've got what you said. Your number one was, you know, and I'm sure it won't be as beautifully eloquent as you said it, but the main point, number one, was to know your why, right? Your compelling reason. Your number two was really defining your leadership and your team operating system. Your third one was role clarity. Everybody's got a job to do. We need to know what it is. Number four, measure and assess. And again, we're going to measure what we want to see as key performance indicators. And then five, I think you said follow up and feedback. Tell me this. I have seen that a good number of issues in a company are process related, not people related, but we tend to attach them to the people because we didn't do all these things that create a process, a support system, a feedback system, a measure system, a leadership system. I mean, all of this is process and systems if we pull the people out of it, so that if it is so solid, then honestly, the people that we're interviewing are going to look at this and they're going to know. I mean, smart people are going to know, I'm going to fit into that or I'm not going to fit into that construct.
Absolutely. I think it's a little arduous to put together. A lot of, you know, that's why I think a lot of people resist this part of their work. It's much more fun to talk about making money and marketing and getting clients or customers. But every client I work with who implements this work makes more money anyway, because you become more efficient with your team. But yeah, I mean, it's essential. You can't have a business if you don't have strong players performing. And the only way to help people perform is to show them how to win. And these processes that we've been referring to are all designed to help you and your team know how to be successful. And when you do get emotional, because most of us do, it's our business, we're very protective of our business, and things go wrong, we kind of can lose our minds. You don't have to replicate or create something in the moment. You can defer to the business's brain that you already built for yourself through these processes. And there's nothing better, right? Like when a client calls me and says, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I'm having this issue with this employee. It just happened this week. She has an employee who has been kind of snarky with other colleagues. And I said, well, let's just run this through your values. What's the problem? Why is this an issue in your business? And so then we quickly identified the value that was sort of being infringed upon. And she had a way to address it versus just saying, I don't like how you're talking to my other employees. That's not okay. Right. It's not very substantive.
Right. I had something similar happen with a client this week as well. I had an employee who was pushing up against some of the different boundaries and not following through with their client the way she was being asked to. So she was being asked to follow through and to do certain things. And in her own mind, she just thought those things didn't really matter. So she ignored the directives. And I asked my client, I was like, okay, so let's go back. Same kind of thing, Kris. What is the company why? What are the company values? And what is the company brand promise? Okay, now let's take a step back, because you have already defined how you want your clients to feel when they engage with your company. Now tell me how her choices, if we follow through to what, everything that happened because she chose to ignore the directive, past the point of her ignoring the directive, let's look at how what did it do to your brand promise? How did it make your client feel? Is it in alignment? And it was that same thing. I remember as a young business owner, having worked corporate and then working for myself, I didn't write everything down at the beginning. And that's when I was very much in that hobbyist mentality, but calling myself a business, if you know what I mean. I was working as a hobbyist. I didn't have all of this written down. I had not dedicated myself to really knowing why I was doing what I was doing. And it was easier to be pushed around and not know how to stand up. I now have, my company notebook that has my why in it, that has my value, has all of these things that we're talking about. And what is so beautiful is whether it's my next hire or a job opportunity or a business collaboration, I take every one of those and run them through the filter. Who my business is and what it wants to be known for and how it's moving forward. And are we on the same page? Are we in congruency or are we not? And it takes a lot of the emotion out, because we're emotional, but it does take it out. And so I think sometimes in that moment, especially dealing with employees, we're either not in a good place to have to deal with it, right? We're in an emotional low. We are overwhelmed. We're stressed. And we almost just let things go, and then they start to build. And I have had clients, I'm sure that you have too, that call me. And that feeling that we can get, Kris, if we've got the wrong client, and when the phone rings or an email comes through and their name's on it, you get that pit in your stomach and you think, oh, I just want to be sick. I don't even want to know what they have to say. Well, when we start feeling like that about our own employees and about coming into our own offices, or we start feeling like I can't even speak to an employee about anything constructive, good or bad, without creating a scene, we need to know that flags are flapping, that that's a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wrote a book about 7 years ago called Change Your Think. And it's all about the thoughts that we think as people who manage people and how those thoughts affect how we behave with them. So absolutely, if you feel dread, resentment, anger, frustration, irritation, any of those negative emotions, when you think about an employee, you need to really look at what the thoughts are you have about them and question them and get back to what the facts are, because you are no longer effective. Leading from negative emotion is not just irresponsible. It can create damage to a relationship and to a culture that is unrepairable.
Yes. Just like any relationship, right? Whether it's a family relationship.
Yeah, but it's a misuse of authority. It's a misuse of power, and it's a misuse of your authority. And so it's even more, I think, exaggerated, because when you are someone's boss, they already give you responsibility for that. And so I believe that leadership is quite an honor and a responsibility and a caretaking role. I do not see it as that you're entitled to get what you want from people when you lead or when you own a business at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's an imbalance for sure. and not one that they can easily write, right? As not being the owner and you being more of the leader. So let me ask you this. What is the best way to hold your employees accountable? How do you set up a good system to do that?
Yeah, consistency is the path. So you have to have all the things that we already talked about: role clarity, measures, follow through and follow up process with feedback. And then, if you are meeting with people, talking about deadlines, benchmarks, project outcomes, if they're generating revenue, those things, client or customer service, whatever it is that you're evaluating, there shouldn't be ever any surprises. So accountability isn't, I've actually said this in a previous post, like, we don't actually hold people accountable. I know that's the phrase, right? But what we really do is we hold ourselves accountable to show up and do the work and have the conversation, address the challenge, address the issue. And as long as we are consistent, again, with recognition of contribution, these conversations should just be like bumper guards in a bowling alley, right? Like, oh, nope, over here, right? Now, if it keeps progressing, like I consider most accountability conversations coaching structures. They're feedback with intention to help redirect behavior or outcomes. But if it's an ongoing problem, someone keeps being late. Like, I've coached 2 people over the past couple of weeks where employees are saying they're quote unquote working from home, but then they show up to meetings and they're sitting in their car or they're sitting in a house that you don't recognize.
Right.
Then that's now become a performance issue, not a coaching issue. And to me, that's when we manage. And those conversations are short, sweet, and very directive. I love the people that I work with, but I do pay for a result. I don't pay for you to have a job, and I don't pay for you to submit time. I pay for outcomes. So I get it. If life happens and if you communicate with me, that's going to be fine. But if it's a consistent issue, as entrepreneurs, we run on lean resources. We don't have the big, robust payroll budgets that big companies have. So you have to be able to make some decisions pretty quickly as the CEO of your business, if you are not maximizing the results that you're getting from a resource. And the only way you're going to do that well is if you are very connected, very consistent, and really, really involved in their performance. That's not micromanagement. That's your responsibility.
I agree. But you know what? It's that feeling that many have that this is, I don't know how to do it. You gave some hints in that about it being direct. It's short and sweet. And I think sometimes there is the feeling, Kris, of needing to over explain.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely. And so it's almost that say what you need to say. You can be kind and direct. There's this idea that I'm only being kind if I'm like trying to talk about it. And the more we talk about it, we honestly tend to either get angrier or we tend to almost make it as if it's no big deal. We've talked ourselves out of it being an issue. Can you give us your idea of like, say, here's an issue we're going to deal with. Here's short, direct, feedback that is hopefully going to alter the course so that we're heading back on the right path. Because that's really what we're trying to do, is get back on the same path. We're trying to get back in a parallel way so that we're not going in opposite directions. I kind of think about it as I raised my sons. And I prayed all the time, Lord, if they're going off the path, help me catch it early so I can guide them back on the path instead of catching it when they were way out in left field. Help me catch it early so I can guide them back. And so the majority of the discipline that we created in our home was not punitive. It was discipline, like you said, staying between the ditches or between the bumper guards. It was trying to keep them on a path that was going to be the most fruitful for their future and not destructive. And so it wasn't meant to be mean, but I couldn't seriously talk to them once a year. I mean, again, I had to go back. Right. And it was a constant day to day. Where are you? What's happening? Where are you struggling? Not just the how was your day, son? Because we know how teenagers answer that one. But
fine.
Right, fine. Whatever, Mom. You ask the same question every day. You know it's fine. But again, like you said, building that relationship and staying involved. And so it is quite similar in the workplace, where we are not so removed from the people that we're working with that we're not able to share. So I would love to hear from your experience, Kris, how to give that direct but kind and very detailed feedback.
So I have a process for that too, of course. And I can use an example. I'll use one of a conversation I had with somebody who used to work for me. She doesn't anymore, so I don't feel badly about it. And she would blame. So every time something wouldn't go right, she would just blame me. Honestly, a lot of the time she would say, oh, well, you said that da 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 da, right? Or, well, they so-and-so did this instead and I couldn't, right? So it's always a blamey, justification-y response, right. Very defensive. And I don't do that. I don't do blame. I don't do defensiveness. The truth is, I always assume it's my fault. Can we just go with that and then fix it anyway? Like, I don't have time. It just causes lag in my company. And it's boring to me. So let's move along. So the first thing you always need to do, so I had a call with her outside of a moment. It wasn't when it happened. That's one thing, right? Yes. So, but then I had a call with her and I said, hey, I want to talk to you about an issue. And the issue is that the last 2 or 3 times that we've had something go wrong, and I don't remember the specific ones anymore, but I used them. Your comment back was to point the finger, like to say, oh, well, that's your fault. Oh, I couldn't do it because of this, or I couldn't do it because of this. So the first thing is the issue, and it's all facts. It's not my opinion. This is what happened. This is what you said. Or this is what happened. This is what you did. Right? Whatever it is, it's provable. Then I just tell her what the impact of that is. And so I said, the impact of you making those comments when something doesn't go right is it causes lag for us. It slows us down. It makes it about you or who was to blame when then we're not actually solving the problem. So my expectation, so then you recalibrate the expectation. My expectation is mistakes are going to happen. Let's just move along. We'll figure out why and we'll fix it.
Right.
I don't care who did it. Fix it. That's what I'm paying you for. And then I let her have an opinion. And of course she felt terrible. She's like, oh, I didn't mean that. I'm like, no, look, hey, this isn't personal. I just want to give you a little heads up. This is something that I think probably is important that we clear up. And I, in this case, there wasn't any like serious dire consequence. If this had been, the 4th time I'd have to address it with her, I might say at that point, if I have to bring this up again with you, I'm going to start to wonder if maybe this isn't the right place for you. We might have to kind of escalate this conversation. I don't want to have to do that, but it could happen. If it's something I've been really working on with her. In this case, it was really just hey, you want to pay attention here? And in her defense, she did. She totally got it. I've had 2 clients this week who are relatively new clients who we've been doing this kind of work with 2 different people. And both of them are like, I can't believe how quickly. One said, I can't believe how dramatic the change has been. And then the one I talked to yesterday, she's like, I can't get over how this guy has completely flipped. And I said, well, what did you learn? She's like, yeah, telling them they're not meeting expectations kind of works.
Well, because don't you think most people, when they're in a job, I know when I worked for other people, I wanted to please them.
Yeah, you want to do well.
To do my job well. I wanted to be looked at as a team member. Like that, those things were important to me.
Yeah.
Right. And I think they are to most people. And if we have a differing view of how we fit into the company, or we think we're meeting expectations and somebody never tells us that we're not until that once a year conversation, whether you need it or not. There's no chance to do it differently. I've seen so many like you, Kris, that completely turned around when people were just made aware. It's almost like, if there's a word that we overuse, and now that I podcast, I can quickly tell that there are certain words or phrases that I might overuse. One of them being so what do you think? So, and then what did you do? So, but right. But in the moment, I might not even realize it. It's not until I go back and I'm either having to edit and listen to the ums and the so's that I'm like, good grief, Michele, get it together.
Right.
And so sometimes our employees, those team members that we have, they aren't aware of these things that they're doing, or these behaviors perhaps that they've fallen into, yet we can see it because we're on the outside or on the receiving end of it. And so almost turning the mirror back and showing it. Huge,
Yeah.
right?
And with, and in that first, like you said, to me, it's always kind. It's like, I don't assume, we have to take the assumption out that people are trying to be a pain.
Right.
They're not.
Until we know.
But even then, most people don't wake up in the morning and think, I can't wait to be, a jerk today. Exactly. I can't wait to be difficult today. Right. They wake up and they're doing the best version of themselves. And sometimes that version is not going to jam with your business culture. And that's okay. Like,
right.
I think there's this belief that somehow once you hire someone, they should just immediately be amazing. And if they aren't, you're terrible as a boss. A lot of women take it very personally. I call that the voiceless problem, right? Like, we just don't talk about it. And I just think that's a big lie. Like, it's normal for even very successful, very accomplished, long-term entrepreneurs to be blindsided by a new hire, or even somebody who's been around for a while. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, who are you? And where did you put the person I used to know? Because you're not her or him, right? Like, what happened here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had people that I've worked with for years, and all of a sudden it's like, something must be going on, or something has shifted. The work output is not the same. The attention's not the same. The responses aren't the same. Right? Like, you can almost start to see it.
Yep.
And it's hard. It is really, really hard. Let me ask you this, Kris, because sometimes when we're seeing things happen in a company, and maybe prior to COVID when everybody was in the office, it was going to be a little bit easier, but we would see things, and instead of, I've seen entrepreneurs, CEOs, I've seen them really try to sit down and think about, when do I speak about this just to one person? And when do I bring this up for everybody at a team meeting? Right?
When you're addressing one person's behavior, it's to that person.
Correct.
If you see that everybody's walking in late, or everybody is consistently not opening the doors on time, or everybody is missing their deadlines, then I would address the group. And then I would also address someone individually.
Yes.
Because the hazard with the group is someone sits there and says, oh, this doesn't apply to me. And I think the other hazard with the group is they sit there and they say, oh, we all know this is Wanda. Right. Why do we all have to be chastised because Wanda can't get to work on time, right?
They're all angry at Wanda. So now you've created a different issue.
Yeah. And you don't look like a leader. You look like a whiner.
Right. I think sometimes that I have seen as a fallback for those who are not really working on developing their own leadership skills, because they think it's easier to address the group, and it takes that responsibility off of them for having to have the one-on-one discussion that makes them very uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what they don't realize is they just created a team issue where one didn't have to exist in some cases. Right? They've now created a dynamic where either they're all, like you said, rolling their eyes, or they're all now irritated at Wanda. Great, Wanda, you're going to get all of our freedoms taken away because you can't show up on time.
Right.
Or now we all have to put our cell phones up even on our break because Wanda doesn't know she can't do it all day. Right. And then you just, again, you have to go back to what is the impact even of our own decisions as leaders, because if we do something, there's an impact. So I think your performance idea of here's what you did and here's the impact. My whole thing is profit is a choice. Every single thing we do in our company is a decision. Not acting is a decision. Acting cowardly is a decision. And there is a trickle down from that. There is something that happens based on every decision that we make. And so the decision to address an issue, not address it to the team instead of the person, or even to do it all correctly, there's an impact to that.
Absolutely.
And then connecting that, what is the impact I want? Now, what's the best decision to make to get that impact?
Yep.
Kind of thinking about it in another way. Is there anything else that you see as you and I both know that we're talking primarily to those in the interior design staging field right now. And many of them started their business, just them. And then they might have brought on, a couple of people here and there to help, but they're now building firms. They're building these big teams. And, I love the 5 skills that you were talking about, or, these processes that we put in place kind of as this framework so that we can, have almost a litmus test. Let's go back and test this out. Let's see what we're looking at here. And we talked about how they can have accountability and recognize contributions and do these things to support team. What is something else that they could do that you see being outside of, I love the be very direct and give them feedback and the ahas that your clients had. I mean, I think sometimes we think it's got to be big sweeping things, but it can be small things, stating these expectations, holding them accountable, telling them where they can improve, right? Giving them a chance to do that. Do you see anything else, Kris, that you think is kind of the low-hanging fruit of leadership that we could do maybe more easily, more quickly, more readily, and see a big impact?
Well, I think, I've actually coached quite a few interior designers. And one of the common themes when you go from solopreneur to entrepreneur, which is where I usually meet most of my clients, at that entrepreneur space. So they've gotten a few more people in the team and they're kind of now don't know what to do with them. There's 2 things that have to happen. You have to really change the way you think about your role in the business. And for designers, and this is true for, veterinarians and floral shop owners, whatever it is that's your area of expertise. What we tend to do when that's what is you try to overuse your competency to manage. So you try and overuse your design skill to manage the team. So for designers, their expertise, right? Your expertise is design. And so sometimes we sort of lean on that even more to try and manage people instead of learning the management part. Like, you had to learn how to be a designer. You can learn how to manage. It's a skill. And one of the things that I've done with quite a few of them is, because it's the design element, right? It's that aesthetic. Like, how do I get my team to think like me in the way that, right? That's my superpower that helped me build my business. Now I want to hire designers. How do I replicate that?
Right.
And that's work that, I've done that with coaching. So I understand that, having, hiring a coach to coach my clients, right? That's a very personal part of your business. And that is very doable. I want to just encourage everyone that you can teach and transfer skill and approach to other people, but you have to stop thinking it will be innate to them, that they can read your mind, that they'll just know, because they won't. You do have to learn how to teach it, communicate it, manage it, right? The simplest skills transfer model on the planet is tell, show, do, review. tell them what you want, show them how you do it, have them do it, and then you review it. But the part that we tend to be really good at is we tell.
Yes.
And then we stop.
Yes.
Yeah. So that doesn't get the job done. If you want to replicate your business and you want to scale, you have to become not a master, but you've got to get skill in skill transfer.
I think there's a fear for many. They don't want to train the person and have them walk away. And then that goes back into leadership, building a firm that people want to work in. You know what I mean? There are other nuances to that.
Yeah, but you know what I say to that? I wanted to address that because I've heard that so many times. They will. They will.
Some are going to. Yes, exactly.
They're going to get everything they can from you, and then they will leave. I mean, in the world now, Michele, you and I are online, right? You do a podcast. I do a podcast. I do webinars. I do all this stuff all the time for free. People take my stuff and they go use it somewhere else.
Right?
I can't control that. You know what's the superpower? Me. And so I could have a whole team of people, and if they all quit, I'm good, because guess what? I can redo it. Can they do it like me? Nope. So I don't worry about that. And I really try and encourage people, do not let that be the reason that you don't develop people. I think it's actually better for designers. I was actually just talking to my vet client about this yesterday. Why not be the vet that mentors the new vets and builds that reputation, and then attracts all these new grads that you keep for 2, 3, 4 years? Why not do that?
Right.
Right. So it's just that thought is so poisonous for a lot of people with small businesses, because they have fear around sharing. And then you don't share, and then you don't get the results you want. So it's this quagmire you put yourself in.
Right. And you know, it also, if you think about the whole E-Myth Revisited model, they don't want to let go of technician. Right. And I want to go back to what you said all the way earlier when you were talking about number 3, role clarity, and you made the comment, everybody has a job description, including you, right, as the owner. I want to tell you, Kris, that was one of the most clarifying things for me. Talking and working through the idea of what is your queen bee role, right? Like, what is the superpower that only you can do, or what is the thing in the company, the task in the company that only you as the owner or the CEO or the visionary or whatever it is, that how you see yourself, what is it that only you can do? And so when I wrote that list, which, believe it or not, is very, very short. And when I
you've been doing a lot, but are you any good at it?
Yeah, right. So I look at the list of what I think I should be doing, like the things that I think that there is no way on this earth ever that if I own that company, I should hand it off. And I want to say, I think I got it down to 3 things.
Nice.
And when I looked at the list of what I was doing, I was like, snap, that is way too much. And all of those things are taking me away from these top 3 things that either is where my brilliance is, or what I absolutely need to do to forward my company. And so it became a beautiful exercise in, all right, who is my next hire and what do I hand off? I actually just meant I still have a coach, right? Because if I'm going to coach at the highest levels that I coach, I need somebody coaching me. And I was talking, right? Because I'm inside my own bottle, just like our clients are. And I said to my coach the other day, I was like, you know, okay, so I'm finding that I'm doing some of this work repeatedly. I don't think I need to be doing this kind of thing repeatedly. And we sat down and looked at it, because it was just somebody else to take a look with me. And she's like, no, you totally should not be the one doing that. You could hand that off, and your clients are actually going to feel more loved. And I was like, yes, you are so right. And so now for the last 2 days, the only thing spinning in my brain is, how do I write down standard operating procedures for that, so that I can show and tell and measure and have a plan and have a job description so that I can hand it off, because I'm not going to go hire without a job description. But if I can now detail it, she's right. Even if it just saved me a couple of hours every month, it would be huge. Right? But
Absolutely.
we don't
Yep.
we don't think that way. And so a lot, and not without prompting or a plan, right?
Right.
So it's really this idea that it's almost like I'm going to build this whole company, and we don't think that we have to let go of some things to be able to grasp hold of others. And so then our plate gets more full, and then we're overwhelmed.
Yep. Absolutely. And there's, couple in that a little bit of guilt if you ask people to do things, and that prevents us from asking for help, or,
we could probably have a whole podcast on that part of it.
For sure.
Guilt and leadership. There's probably be about 50 books on that.
Actually, I've done one. It's called Entrepreneurial Guilt. It's a podcast episode. Yeah.
There you go. See, and I did one on guilt. I did one as well on guilt and shame.
There you go.
I'll go find yours on entrepreneurial shame, and I'll add mine on guilt and shame, and we'll just load you up in the.
Yeah, we're all pretty good at that shame thing.
We are, and for some reason we think we should do it all and be awesome at all of it all the time. I asked another business owner this week when she was telling me she felt shame because she's very much a visionary. And so she loves to get things going, but she is not the integrator implementer, right? So she was feeling shame that she wasn't carrying everything all the way through. And I said to her, well, do you think it's shameful that the people that you do hire to implement aren't the visionary? Well, no, why would they be both? I'm like, well, okay, could we just look at that from the reverse? And I said, the problem is not that you don't fully implement forward, is that you don't hire anybody to go do it.
Exactly.
You don't have to be the one. And for some reason, Kris, we're in middle school and high school, and we have to have all these great grades in every darn subject to get where we want to go. And the minute we get to the next level of college, they're like, okay, what is the one or two things that you really love? And let's kind of forget the rest.
Exactly.
And then we move into owning our own companies, and we go back to that idea of that we must be perfect and understand and love every bit of it. And it's just not the case. And it keeps I told her it was like being in a hot air balloon and having it ready to take off and having all these tethers holding you back to the ground. And we've got to let those things go so that we can focus on what we're doing really great and really right. And all of these pieces of leading our team that you're talking about, or leading the company and the vision and the direction of the company.
Yep. Absolutely. Well said.
Kris, you are a delight, and you are a smart woman. I have so enjoyed our time talking today and really looking into leadership. And I think that you have explained it with such clarity and ease that you've made it very approachable and understandable for our listeners. And I really want to thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
So, Kris, tell us where we can find you. Tell us the name of your podcast, and tell us where you're hanging out these days, and your website. We'll put all of it in the show notes, but I want everybody to know where they can find you.
Okay, awesome. So the best place to sort of interact with me is on Instagram. My Instagram is profile is Kris Plachy Coach. And then if you're interested in if you're at that tipping point where you're like building a team, I'd encourage you to do the quiz we have. It's really helps you determine, are you solopreneur, entrepreneur, or CEO, and what you need to kind of help you make that next transition. And that's at howtoceoquiz.com. And the podcast is Lead Your Team. And it is on anywhere mostly you can get podcasts, Lead Your Team, and then it's, with me. So I think you'll find it complements the conversations that you have here as well. So that would be good additional insights for your listeners.
I love that. It'll definitely be in my library, and I encourage it to be in everyone else's. Well, awesome. Kris, it's really been fun. And I appreciate your insight into this. And I took crazy notes, and it's always a pleasure to speak to someone who is looking to help men and women, but really with a focus towards helping women think about how to manage and to lead their businesses with excellence. And so thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kris, for joining us and talking all about teams. Make sure to check out her podcast and other deliverables. In my Aim with Intent methodology, we focus on being intentional about people, processes, and profits. Today, this podcast focused on the people aspect. Don't feel like you need to find your way through leadership alone. Reach out and let's do it together. You can find out more regarding my coaching services at scarletthreadconsulting.com. Remember, everything leads you towards or away from profitability, especially the hiring and retention of great employees. Each decision counts, and profit doesn't happen by accident.